Hey, and welcome back to Hardcore Human Design Podcast. Why did I do that again? Oh my god, I did that last week too. Hey guys, I'm Chell. That's Miko.
Hi everyone, nice to be here again.
I swear I know what podcast I'm hosting. I really do. Anyway, last week we alluded a lot of bit, to talking about Russ Cook, aka the hardest geezer, aka the dude who just ran the length of Africa in just under a year. Wild. We are going to get into his story and obviously his human design a little bit more as well. But I'd love to start this conversation with, have you ever had the desire to do anything like this, Miko? Run the length of Africa, run the length of your city, your street?
No, I have not had the desire to run anything because I'm not a big runner. I just don't enjoy running in the first place. So I only do it when the sun is out and I have a great playlist and I can run to that. But even that, a lot of people wouldn't even consider that running because it probably stops at 2.5 kilometers, my max that I enjoy running. And then it just gets very tiring. So, but something similar that I would consider as crazy or similarly crazy was that I really, really wanted to join the Shaolin monks in China. And there is a training that you can join. It's not with the Shaolin monks directly, because for that you really actually have to become a Shaolin monk. But there is a place close to where a lot of them reside, where they have a very intense training, and it does sound very similar, or at least when I was reading up on it, it sounded very similar to Navy SEAL training. Very insane, hardcore mental training, physical training. But yeah, this was something that I really wanted to do. I ended up not doing it because I don't really remember the reason, but it was probably something related to school or studies or something. But yeah, this was the craziest thing that I ever thought about doing that would have pushed my body to the absolute limits.
Damn. Yeah, I don't
What
think I've
about
ever
you?
had the desire. No. No, I've never had the desire to do anything like this. I think the most, maybe my most athletic, I was running pretty consistently, but even then, I think it was like 7 miles. That was my wildest and craziest, and it was fine. But I think the drive for that came after I was T-boned in a car. Like I was the passenger in a car and I was T-boned. And I couldn't walk for like 3 weeks. So all of that was like the culmination after a year of like regaining strength and being able to run. So I'm pretty sure I did it on like the year anniversary of the accident. So I don't know if that's really the same, but sure, I pushed my body physically for like a little bit and then I celebrated with a nice latte, as one does.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. I find the human body extremely fascinating. And this comes from what it can achieve, how far you can take it, as when you're building muscles, when you're building flexibility, what you can do with it, and how it comes actually from your mental state, how far you push yourself mentally. That's how far you can actually push your body, and sometimes it goes even further than you ever would have imagined it being able to go. And so from that perspective, I'm super fascinated by it, especially people that there is a woman on Instagram. Her name is something Jane, I think. Yeah, it's very vague information right now. But she was 50 or 60 when she started to exercise like crazy. She became a role model. Now she's 77, I think. And she started her health journey very late. When you see pictures of her, I think she started at 55 actually. And when you see pictures of her at that age, she's very, very curvy, and she doesn't look healthy. So it's not a healthy curvy. It's an unhealthy curvy. And when she started, you can follow her whole health journey, and her daughter is a bodybuilder. So she's really taking part in competitions, and so she started to also train her mom when she was ready to start this journey for herself. Because you always have to be ready yourself. And then she is now, you can see the muscles in her shoulders, in her arms, everywhere. It's really crazy what you can do if you set your mind to it.
And that leads us perfectly into today's conversation about Russ Cook. So I've listened to several podcasts where he was talking about himself, his life journey, and what I've gathered from that. Okay, complete transparency. The only way that I knew, or I guess the way I knew about his running Africa was through another YouTube channel that I watch. And one of the people from there ended up doing like the last day marathon with him, right? Like that final thing. I think like thousands of people ended up doing that last day marathon with Russ. Anyway, I didn't watch his full 360 plus day journey, but listening to these podcasts gives so much insight into his his pre-Africa run mindset, which is wild. So he's not a superhuman, but like Miko was saying, it's all about the mindset. For him, there was literally no failure. There was no option of failure because he wanted to win, quote unquote. And winning for him, at least in this instance, was running the length of Africa. We'll talk more about in detail of what that looked like pre, during, and post in just a sec. But from like what I gathered is he wasn't a very athletic kid, and he was not a great child. So he moved out of his parents' house at 17, had like 5 or 6 jobs just to stay afloat. Wasn't doing well, like mental health wise. Wasn't doing well, like making ends meet. And one of his friends was just like, "Hey man, we're gonna start training for this marathon together." They ended up running this marathon together. I think it was around the same time. So he was like 17, 18, and running just got him out of this funk. I think he initially ran a half marathon and then a full marathon, and it just got him out of this funk. And the adrenaline, I think, just is what helped him kind of get to that next phase of realizing that things could be better for himself out there. So at 22, he ran what he called the Asia to London run. And he did this completely solo. So he started in Istanbul, Turkey, and finished in London. It took him 70 days. So he ran a marathon and a half, I think, every day, which is nuts, consistently for 7 days. He had no team. The way he was documenting it was like on his own. And because it's Europe, there were enough like convenience stores or gas stations or small towns for him to be able to purchase food along the way. And that's what he did. He literally did it flying solo, sleeping in like a hammock every night. Oh my God, could you imagine running that long and like not having a nice bed to lie down in? Because I cannot. That sounds absolutely horrible for 70 days. Anyway, he was 22 when he finished that, and he loved that grind. He loved the I have to do something every day mindset, and kind of immediately after that wanted another experience like that. But there was a bit of a gap in between. So let's assess this really quick. I think one, that probably doesn't get talked about enough because it didn't have the same like YouTube presence as his run across Africa did, nor did it have the same kind of funding. But damn, this dude has done some epic runs twice, and like that's more than just like ultra marathoning, right? Because ultra marathoners are like anywhere between 50 and 100 miles, kilometers, one of those metrics. But this is like literally every day for months at a time, which is wild to have the stamina to be able to do that. Any thoughts before I continue?
Just that, to me, it sounds super wild. I would not have been able to sustain that. I mean, okay, yeah, mindset is one thing, but wow. Yeah, crazy.
This is also a projector and a manifestor reflecting on this, guy, so take this with a grain of salt. You know? Anyway, I barely had energy to do homework today. Let's be real. I had to have a mid homework power. I was going to say snack. It was basically just lunch. It was second lunch. Anyway, okay, so almost immediately when he finished his Asia to London run. He wanted to do something else, but obviously the funding was not there to be able to do it. So it took him like 4 to 5 years to kind of get this funding going. He ended up asking some friends who had done really well in the like Bitcoin market, and they ended up funding his trip and wanted to make like this epic documentary at the end of it. And he's like, yes, and let's also document it along the way to get buy-in. Because his ultimate goal with this was, yes, to be able to run across the length of Africa, to be the first person to do this in a really significant way, in the fastest, quote unquote, fastest way. I think his goal was 280 days, which would have required almost 2 marathons a day. I think it was like 10,000 kilometers total, or 10,000 miles total that he ran. Miles are longer than kilometers. Yes. Actually, I have stats. Please hold. Yeah, 10,100 miles and 352 days to complete this. Miko, your eyes are just like, OMG.
He actually completed it in that amount of time.
Yeah, but he wanted, so he wanted to do it in 280 days, which is even more ridiculous, with having to do like visas, with potentially being abducted, with like the threat of malaria, the wild animals. I don't know what else. The heat. Yes, the heat. There you go. Okay. So he did all of this in, like I said, 352 days. Along the way, he got food poisoning, kept running. Could you imagine pooping your brains out while you're still running? That sounds miserable. And like, I'm really, I have not done extensive exploration into his design. So I'm really excited to see what motors are at play in all of this. Because, damn, this is internal, external motivation, must be all of the things. Anyway, in day 45, he started passing blood through his urine, and there was like, yo, you should probably take like a rest day after 5 days of that. So that's good. Sorry, 4 days of that. So he took a break there. Day 64, he was robbed at gunpoint, and he was also taken into the woods or the forest, the jungle for 2 days. So he was abducted for 2 days along the way. Sorry, that was at day 102 that he was abducted, different from the being robbed at gunpoint. Had a back injury at day 205, had visa problems, had sandstorms, had to run at night because of 50-degree temperatures during the day. Just to show you how grueling this was. And this man still wanted to do it. He's like, I'm going to do it. End of story. The end goal throughout all of this is just to win for himself. And if you watch all of his videos, I mean, yeah, there's ups and downs. Even just like his quick little posts on TikTok. Like, he's in a pretty good mood for running multiple marathons every day for almost a year. Who can do that? Okay, well, this dude can, the hardest geezer, and I feel like that name is so well earned and well deserved at this point. But the last podcast that I was listening to, just to kind of round all of this out, basically his goal, yes, was to do this, to complete this for himself, but to also show the world that hard things are possible, and it really is about the mindset that you're bringing into it, right? And he was saying that there is no room for no, right? He's doing this for others. He's doing this for his future so that he can do more epic things like this, right? If he didn't complete this, then there wouldn't be the buy-in from the world that he has now. There wouldn't be potentially more opportunities for him going forward. And he wants to be able to bring people along for the ride, for mental health, and for the other organizations that he helped raise money for, right? So like there's a bigger goal and bigger mission behind all of this, which is beautiful. But I think what kept him through, at least from my understanding of like through his words, what kept him going through is knowing that there can be greater impact on the other side of all of this. Because when you're running the length of Africa and you're first person to do this, you garner world recognition. Oh, just kind of cool. But yeah, let's dive into his chart and see what aligns, what doesn't, where, yeah, I'm just really excited to see all of this. Oh, and to give you guys some insight, his birth time was not accessible. Birth time was not accessible on the interwebs. So I did a little bit of pendulum swinging. And if you're new here, yeah, we get a little hippy dippy on this show. So I used my necklace as a pendulum. Hey yo. And we did this multiple times. Miko did it on her end as well. She looked up both of the charts. I asked specific question like MG versus projector. And then I like redid the birth time. And this is the closest that we came up to with the information and the energies that be. So that's what we got. And that makes him a 1-3 emotional MG. Take it away.
And it's also interesting that we chose to try to narrow down his birth time this way because he's a big believer of energy. The podcast that you sent me, he was talking about the energy that you bring. That is so important, and this is what is going to attract others into doing this with you. And I was like, okay. This is very interesting. And also so I hope that if he does listen to this and he could provide us with his accurate birth time, this would be fantastic, because then we could do a proper reading of his chart. And as the time or his chart changes so much during this day.
I would just say, yes, it does. And Russ, if you are out there listening, because you best believe we're going to put your name all up on this episode, hit us up. We'd love to have you on.
So yeah, this is the one that we chose to go with. So also take it with a bit of a grain of salt or a pinch of salt, just in case it isn't the correct birth time. But looking at this, another thing that stands out is that in the podcast episode, he was saying that he's not really someone that shares a lot about the project that he's doing. As in, before he's starting them, he keeps it more to himself. And if you take a look at his chart, you can see that taking the charts apart is going to leave him as a reflector in the design space, but also in the personality side of things. So he is a very sensitive person to other people's energies. He does take it in. He does take energies from others sensitively. So he's very open to them. And he may not even see himself as a generator, at least not for a large part of his life at the beginning.
Quick note on that. So if you take my chart apart as well, I'm a reflector in both design and personality. And oftentimes I don't feel like a manifester. So what Miko's saying has a lot of validity to it, right? Like sometimes you don't feel the power that you have. A lot of times it's just, especially if you're not in your not self, it's a lot of feeling other people's energy, which can be extremely overwhelming at times. So just wanted to toss that in there because I've experienced it.
And I've just had a manifesting generator talk to me about this yesterday during the day before yesterday during the live session that I held on Inside Timer. And she was also saying a lot of people have recommended her to listen to her gut instinct. And she says that that doesn't resonate with her. And I obviously didn't see her chart because it was just information that she placed in the chat. But it often happens that, especially when there is not a conscious connection to your inner authority, or to, in this case as well, the sacral, that you may not feel this connection from the get-go. This may be something that you need to grow into. You need to become older and wiser and more adapt to how your body is speaking to you for you to be able to understand your inner authority in the first place. So the decision to run this marathon, or not marathon, country-thon. Yeah, I just invented a word because there is nothing like this. So yeah, to run across continent-thon, even. It's not even a country. It's like, yeah. You're know what I'm trying to say. World-a-thon. Yeah. So to run all the way across Africa, that is, it's crazy. But his idea to do it in the first place came, and then it needed time to evolve. He didn't just jump onto it. He waited for the right time, the right sponsoring, until he actually went to do it, even though he had the fire in him to already do it far before doing it. And this is something that you see in emotional beings, that it is important for them to do exactly that. A lot of times, actually, when someone is defined emotionally, but not consciously emotionally defined, they may react like a splenic being, because they just run and jump into one thing after the next when they have been conditioned to do so, to make quick decisions. So this is something that is never right for an emotional being. You always should take time to at least sleep over it. And when I say that, it is when you're 100% sure that your birth time is accurate. This is the only time that you can really rely on human design, where you know for sure this is my exact time of birth. Because otherwise, I would always recommend to just see how it goes, see how it feels, and just experiment with it. It is an experiment. It is something that you need to try out for yourself and see the results for yourself. So when you're not entirely sure of your birth time, just give it a try for several weeks, several months, and see how it goes. And usually it's pretty damn accurate still, that when you follow your strategy and your authority and you just stick to these two things, it's going to help you so much. As we said, the profile is a 1-3. So he's someone that, at least we assume that this is his profile. So he's someone that is going through a lot of challenges, but he always gets back up. And as Celestina has mentioned in his past, it seems to be quite accurate. He's only 27, so he's very, very young. And however, this theme in his life is going to be something that is going to accompany him for the rest of his life, where he's facing challenges, but a third line is extremely resilient for that. So they are able to handle these challenges. They're able to recognize that it's important for their growth, and they will just evolve through this process. It is a profile that is in the lower trigram, so it is very personal. It is not interpersonal in the profile itself. So what he does it for his growth. His motivation is as well to support others and to help others, but it's mainly for him to evolve, and to the initial spark was also because he wanted to get out of his mindset, the challenging mindset that he had, or I don't know if it was depression or whatever it may have been, but it really helped him to release all of this sacral energy and to channel that into something that he felt was worth and was helping him grow and evolve. This is something that he mentions over and over again. I just need something that shows me that every day I'm improving, I'm growing, I'm evolving. So he also has the 214 channel, which is the driver. The second gate is known as the driver, and he really has this motivation in the moon as well. So this is really his why. Why is he getting up in the morning? And this is, in my opinion, if this is really his profile, which I do believe it fits very well to him. So it's this, I get up in the morning to go into this direction and to just keep going at it. And I find that so interesting that this is in his Venus. So his values is the 14.5, and his lunar personality moon is in 2.6. So it says that 14.5, it's in his detriment. So it's a dissatisfaction with the gift of others that creates feelings of superiority, innate recognition of those without power, fueling the illusion of superiority. So you can interpret this as a very negative thing if you want, but Ra always looked at it as this or that, this and that. It's not a positive or negative. It is, you're either this or you're that. And this is something that is then elevated in you. So I also don't think that reading these things verbatim and understanding them verbatim is the right way to go about it. So you always need to look at several different references. I sometimes struggle with reading these things and listening to them or interpreting them the way that they are written in Maya Mechanics or Jovian Archives books of Ra and also in here. But there are many, many different versions of how these lines have been interpreted. So I would then go to the book of the I Ching that was translated by many, many different people, and I have my version that I like. So reading through these is going to help you a lot. So in this case, what I would do as well is that gate 14 and line 5. Line 5s are always connected to the interpersonal connection. It has a lot to do with being a networker, but a networker that really meets random strangers or that has these connections with random strangers. It is not about, as it is with line 4, where it is more about your family and friend circle, but it is really impacting and connecting with strangers. And to me, having this in the values system, so I would focus more on this part, that the ever-present risk inherent in positions of power, there is always this risk that you have your ego overtake you in a negative way, that you interpret it and think that you're the best, you're the greatest, you're this, you're that. But he really doesn't strike me as someone like that. He's doing these things for him in the first place, but he's also doing it because he wants to have an impact on others that may have been in a similar situation to him, to motivate them, to show them, hey, you can achieve whatever it is you want with your mind.
I love that you brought up the why piece of it, because that's what he kept coming back to in the last episode, or like the last podcast of his that I listened to. And this is, I think it came out right before he like started his Africa run. So he recorded it maybe like a week or two before, and it came out like as he was starting his Africa run. But he mentioned you have to keep your why at the forefront of your mind every day. And that's quite literally what has kept him going, which is really cool to be able to see that in his chart as well.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. The thing that kept him going, and this is really his moon, is the line to the gate 2, the drive to go forward is what is keeping him going. And this is, yeah, it's funny to see this in the chart. The other thing that he has is the gate 12 or the channel 1222. And gate 12 is really about having the right timing when you speak about something. He's an extremely emotional being. His cross of Eden also has 3 gates in the emotional solar plexus. So gate 6, gate 30, but he has 4 gates in general defined in the emotional solar plexus. And the cross of Eden being 2 of his major elements in his incarnation cross, which is also about the life path that you follow in life. So having 2 of these in your defined emotional solar plexus in his personality side of his incarnation cross helps him to go on his journey on the conscious aspect of things, on the mental aspect of things as well, on his own in a certain way. But he does need other people when it comes to gate 11. So this is another part of the cross of Eden. Gate 11 is about the person that really wants to experience things. So it is connected to being a storyteller, but without gate 56, which he doesn't have. He experiences all of these things, but he can't really express the thoughts that have been created during these experiences. However, he is able to do so from his emotional aspects. So the things that he has experienced, once he has established an emotional connection to them and he can understand them and has gained clarity over time before expressing them, then he has immense power to do so through gate 12, because gate 12 really needs the right time. And when it has the right time, when it feels clear about the message that it wants to share, about the emotional message especially that he wants to share with the world, then his voice and his words will have a huge impact on the world. And you can see that. I mean, I just checked his Instagram. I think it's 1.2 or 1.3 million followers. So that's a lot. But yeah, I what
interesting.
do you think about it?
So again, in that pre-Africa podcast, what he was feeling, or like what he's feeling, he was like, I need to quell that, because what I'm feeling doesn't matter. It's all about what I'm thinking in the moment. So it's really interesting that his biggest connection to his throat is coming from that emotional center, his feelings, but having to repress, at least in his words, right? Having to repress that for the run to make it through, I think is very interesting. And probably also having to like repress those negative thoughts, right? And keep that mindset really positive. So it's just interesting, I think the mental frame that people who do hard things have to put themselves in to overcome and to push through a challenge, because our bodies are probably most definitely telling us one thing, but it's about how we can get through, cope, and come out on the other side, probably with a lesson learned.
Yeah. Also, I think that brings up a great point, because we also need to look at the undefined centers or the open centers. And we have an open ego, which only has two gates pointing at it, but there is no gates coming out of it. So it's open. And there can be a lot of pressure coming from an open ego. And it is, I just shared with you the lecture from Ra on open and undefined egos. And I only started to listen to it, but he basically says that it's very difficult to explain to an open or undefined ego not to compare themselves all the time, and that they don't have anything to prove. It's impossible to explain that to them. An undefined or open ego has nothing to prove in this world, according to Ra. A defined ego does. There is something that we need to prove. Me and Celestina, we both have defined egos. So there is something we need to prove. But as an undefined ego, what he was saying, he said, and Ra is also an ego authority. He's not an ego authority, but he does have the ego defined. He's a splenic authority, but he has it defined, and he said, I wish I had an undefined or open ego, because then I would just float through life without needing to prove anything. But a person with this undefined or open ego is extremely conditioned most of the time and will try to prove themselves. And you can see this as well in Russell Cook, that he's trying to prove something with these runs. There is no other explanation. So he's either to prove that the mind is more powerful than the body, or he's trying to prove himself, or he's trying to prove something to someone or to some individuals. But it's actually very strenuous on an undefined or open ego if he uses this as his motor. So as long as he's using his satisfaction, so his sacral energy and his emotional energy of his joy and his happiness, and fueling positive but also negative emotions into this run. So I'm assuming that he doesn't necessarily suppress these emotions, or at least I'm hoping that he doesn't suppress them. I'm hoping that he's instead channeling them into the run. So yes, there is one way where you could just flow into these emotions and let yourself be sucked into whatever you're feeling, because you're going to feel the whole bandwidth of emotions. You're going to feel the ups and downs, and he has the individual wave. So he has deep melancholic stages, and he has highs. He has really high highs and low lows as an individual wave emotional being. And then there are times where he's just mellow. So he goes along, then he has these highs and these extreme lows, or it's usually he's riding the neutral wave, then he has the high, then he's going back down and he rides the neutral wave, and then he has a bad low, and then this is kind of how the individual emotional wave works. So during this run, he has probably experienced everything, every kind of emotion that comes up. And now he has a choice. He can either ride that wave, he can jump onto it and identify himself with it, take it personal, and that is going to tear him down. So if it's a negative emotion, if it's a positive one, it can actually fuel him and can push him further and further. But in a negative situation, he may just feel like giving up if he would take it personal. So what he's probably doing is that he has learned to channel this energy, these emotions into energy, and to use them as a fuel, or he has learned to distance himself from them and to not let himself be sucked into whichever direction with these emotions.
I also wonder the designs of the people who were on his team. Because, I mean, these people spent every day together. I think it was maybe like 3 or 4 of them spent every day together for a year, like living in a van and doing this together, right? So I'm assuming the energetics of that group of people played a lot into the energy that he had for the day-to-day, and just kind of the energy of the group as well, to overcome and to see this challenge through, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And he, as we said at the beginning, he's very receptive for it. He's quite open for a generator. He has 4 centers defined out of the 9 centers. But as we said, when you're taking these 2 charts apart, he becomes a reflector in both. So he may not even see himself as a generator or an emotional being, or he's only learned to recognize these aspects within him after quite some time. And yeah, as an emotional being, a lot of times when you have this kind of connection where you're not fully consciously connected to your emotional solar plexus, you often even believe that you're not emotional, that you are not the emotional one. And people with an undefined emotional solar plexus will then be taking in your emotions, and they may be the ones that are coined drama queens, but actually they're just reflecting back your emotions. And emotional beings are here to be emotional, to express their emotions, to learn from their emotions. And this can be done in a healthy way. So I would also love to see the designs of the other individuals around him. Especially I would like to know who had the root defined or the ego as well. Maybe there must have been, if there were 3 or 4 of them. I'm sure that they somehow connected the ego in some way and also the root in some way. But this undefined root can feel a lot of pressure. And I think he also did feel a lot of pressure during this whole run, from just trying to complete it in a certain timeline and not completing it in that timeline. I think he must have felt a lot of pressure. I think this was very interesting to see a manifesting generator in this kind of constellation create something so big and impactful. It's I don't know, so many steps for one human being, and still making a big wave for so many others out there. It's quite a statement, and it's always beautiful to see someone being able to push their body to that extent. I find it very inspiring.
Dude, agreed. And thinking about this, like when we were messing around with like the pendulum and like the birth time, manifestor came up a lot throughout the day. Projector came up. I'm like, Dude, ain't no way like that person would have enough consistent energy to be able to do this. If he is a manifesting generator, honestly, I feel like that's probably the only type that can make this come to fruition. And just energetically, from like having enough internal life force energy to be able to consistently run that much. And I forgot to mention before, not 2 weeks later, after running and like finishing Africa in like the beginning of April, he ran the London Marathon. What?
No, not no, crazy. And
Yeah.
I mean, his main circuitry is also empowerment, so he has so much individual energy inside of him. Yeah, crazy
Wild.
guy.
Good for you, man. I'm so proud of you, hardest geezer, Russ
Yeah.
Cook. You've earned that name. I hope you continue to do some epic shit now that you have some world recognition, man.
Yes, absolutely. Now he should get the sponsorships that he needs just much more easily,
Oh, yeah.
hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's a good way to end this episode. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. It was a pleasure being here again.
Until next week. Ciao, guys.
Bye.